Ladies and gentlemen, Eve Echoes has been out now for about 2 weeks, and during this time, we've seen a somewhat rocky response, admittedly, in the beginning. The App Store and Play Store reviews are kind of low, and we're going to talk about that and give some reasons why. We're going to try to answer the question today, was Eve Echoes' global launch a failure? And what defines a failure of a global launch? And if it was a failure, what were the reasons behind that? Right in the beginning, I'm going to say personally, I don't believe it was a failure. However, the ratings aren't telling the same story. So what we're going to do is look into these reasons, explain why this may be, and try to forecast a little bit of the future and what it may mean for Eve Echoes. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing for more videos about Jimro mobile gaming, as well as Eve Echoes in particular. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing we're going to look at here is the Eve Echoes Apple reviews. If you take a look at the Apple reviews here, what you can see is that there's a pretty consistent amount of negative reviews. It's only been 2 weeks, and so that's quite a bummer when in the beginning of a game's launch you get a lot of negative reviews. Keep in mind, a large amount of negative reviews is something that does happen to a pretty good amount of games, as there's a lot of new players. Basically, everyone who started a new game is a new player at that point, and everyone's kind of making the decision on whether or not they like the game. Once the game's been going on long enough, most people kind of know what the game is or have seen enough footage that they only really start downloading stuff that they'll think they'll like. I know if you only play gacha games, for instance, you're probably not going to download something that's not a gacha game, and if you do, you might be more inclined not to continue playing it. This is a rather important point in this video, as this game is not like any other game, with the exception of maybe Second Galaxy, which if we look here at the comparative Second Galaxy iTunes ratings, you can see that they have about the same thing going on. Negative reviews and positive reviews. Granted that they have slightly higher ratings, a 4.0 instead of a 3.7, but they get a lot of negative reviews too. And keep in mind, Second Galaxy is so much a copy of Eve Echoes to the point they actually straight up ripped some assets from Eve Echoes, and there was some kind of legality issues that went on there. So how does these games being very different play into this? Well, Eve Echoes does a very poor job in the beginning at explaining what kind of game it is and why you should enjoy the game. It automatically assumes you know what Eve is, and it assumes mobile game players have played this large of a depth of game and this big of a universe in mobile. They haven't, because it's never gone to mobile without Second Galaxy basically copying it. If you look at the actual reviews in the Play Store, you can very quickly start to realize where the problem is. Tutorial is useless. Pay to play. I play, encounter something, but it doesn't tell me why I can't do that. I check the tutorial, search online, and finally give up. This is true. I myself, as an official content creator, have spent time trying to find answers to things to no avail until we just had to find it ourselves in the game. Moving on here, okay? Amazing graphics and music, and that's it. Gameplay is extremely boring. Game auto-plays itself, and you sit there waiting for 15 warps to finish. This is another problem. Eve does not explain to you that the gameplay of the game is really not the fun part. It's the world in which the gameplay evolves, and the world in which you create a space for yourselves. This is the next space equivalent of a Dungeons and Dragons, like, you know, you guys know LARPing or whatever, live action role play, where you like role playing, you pretend you're actually in it. Like, this is the next step to that in space, basically. If you guys remember the Palm Pilots way back in the day, there was this game called like Space Trader or something on the Palm Pilots where you just fly from place to place and like sell cargo, and eventually there's Pokemon style battles where you would like encounter other ships. This is that equivalent. And those Palm Pilot games, I mean, who even owned a Palm Pilot back in the day, right? Those games were never popular to begin with. So in order to explain the phenomenon and the coolness of how space exploration, you know, gigantic depth games work, you have to nail it in the explanation when the person downloads the game. And unfortunately, I have to say this is where Eve does fail. You mix the fact that you really have to figure out the game on your own, plus the fact that the game itself has had kind of some connection issues and rocky starts. You throw in a little sauce of the fact that on top of that, when you blow up a ship, it's actually gone, and then you cook it together in the stew of it doesn't really explain to you very well how to get your ship back once it's blown up, and that only some ships can in fact be insured. It does tell you these things in the game, but it doesn't explain it very thoroughly. Keep in mind in this day and age that you really have to hold the player's hand. The bar is set so high in the guidance these days that if you don't teach the player and basically baby them through everything, the game is an automatic failure to them. I'm not blaming the populace for this. I'm blaming the producers for failing to realize this point. If you wanted to play an MMO, most people who are going to play an MMORPG are going to be playing it on their PC, and they're already familiar with the genre. I don't know many people who are avid MMORPG players on their phone, and you have to realize that when you develop the game. Personally, I think this game's wonderful, but I do spend quite a bit of my time managing the game outside of the actual game or downloading new patches continually. It does seem that they do patch and fix things when issues arrive. The new patch that came is significant. It actually is fixing a lot of really big bugs, which is great. So it does look like the production of the patches and getting out fixes will be soon, but it is another one of these rocky launches. So the point of this video here is not really to rag on the game and say a million reasons why this game was a failure, because it's not. The point of this video is that the game pretends to be a failure by failing to explain why it's actually a wonderful game. Eve Echoes has amazing amounts of depth and tons of things to do, but you have to figure that out for yourself. It doesn't tell you that you can spend all of your time just managing other players, and like I'm doing. I'm managing like 400 players in multiple corporations. We have over 500 people in the Discord. You can join the Discord down below and join our corporation if you would like. You can just do that. That's my role. We have people who all they're doing is buying the ores from our miners and paying them out, and they just love doing that. We have people that are only mining. We have people that are protecting the mining. We have people that are explorers going and finding new stations for us. We have diplomats. I have people managing the Discord. The game is in fact in itself a virtual world, but not everyone wants to play in a virtual world. A lot of people in fact want to play in a fantasy world. People want to forget the nuance of the day-to-day things that Eve Echo reminds them of, like basically having an 8-hour-a-day job. That is where the separation of players is going to happen. The casual player in Eve Echo gets bullied and removed typically, unless they're only playing in the high security zone, which they've done a good job of fixing. You can't even attack players there. So it is fairly safe for new players, and they've even added things like warp stabilizers, so that way you can't actually get warp disrupted and you can just run away from people trying to warp you unless they have a bunch of those. And that basically is like ganking. They've added a lot of noob-friendly things. The problem is, even if you add a billion noob-friendly things, the game's not a noob-friendly game. And it's not designed to be that way. It's designed as kind of a winner takes all. You go get your own region in space and you work together. For the casual player that's playing this game while taking a dump, the experience is admittedly not that great. And I think that's where the negative reviews are coming from. I think if I had to drive this video home with a point of my own after actually playing the game, I would say that I love this game dearly. I'm going to be continuing to play it, making videos on it. I would highly recommend it to anyone that's considered playing it to try it out. However, if you don't like the game and this wasn't for you, I can understand why. You may be looking for swords and shields and not spreadsheets and work. And I would close with the final point that in the same way real life is extremely rewarding when hard work pays off, so is work in Eve Echoes extremely rewarding in a way that basically any other game cannot give you. This game has tons and tons in it that in it of itself is completely unique that I've never experienced in another game. Large-scale corporations are one thing. There's conglomerates that are like thousands and thousands of people working together in giant fleets. You know, doing everything from mining your own materials, reprocessing them, and then creating your own ship, your own modules for that ship, and then putting everything on. Even that's fantastic. I can't wait until somebody adds an Iron Man mode in this game where you literally have to do everything yourself and you can't even trade with any players. That would be cool. That being said, if you liked this video, consider subscribing, as every single subscription helps me a ton. I do this full time, and YouTube, last month, I only made like $2,000 off YouTube ad revenue. So your boy's not balling out with this many subscribers, so I could use a few extra. That being said, I love y'all. Have a great day.